The morning they escorted me out, the sky over the river wore the same bruised color as the carpet in the executive corridor. I remember thinking, absurdly, that someone should have chosen a brighter shade, something hopeful, something that wouldn't take the light hostage. Instead, it was steel gray and mute, swallowing footsteps and apologies alike. "In the spirit of fresh perspectives," she said, hands steepled, voice calibrated to the pitch of inevitability. "We're restructuring. Your role is redundant." Redundant. 25 years distilled into one word, a blunt instrument swung with manicured fingers. Behind her, the glass wall framed the city like a painting of somewhere better I wasn't allowed to touch anymore. The new president, Elena Hart, had been in the chair for 77 days. She smiled the careful smile of a person who practices empathy in front of a mirror. The corner of her mouth twitched when she said fresh, as if the word itself surprised her with its power. "Of course," I said, though my pulse had climbed a ladder I couldn't see the top of. "I understand." In truth, I understood too much. You don't spend a quarter-century inside a single company without learning where the bones lie under the floorboards, which pipes groan before they rupture, how the building hums when it's happy and when it's ready to buckle. I had arrived at Northland Systems as a junior analyst with a second-hand suit and a head full of calculus. I'd grown with it, projects, people, crises, recoveries, until my badge opened almost every door. I believed in what we made, enough to stay late, to start early, to miss anniversaries and sleep through Sundays. And that belief had been repaid with a box and a polite escort. "Security will help you gather your belongings," Elena said, a closing benediction. "We appreciate your contributions." She offered a hand. I watched my own rise to meet it, a reflex I couldn't turn off. Her palm was cool. I told myself I would remember the exact temperature for later, a useless fact to occupy the closet where rage wanted to live. In the corridor, the framed photographs of milestones looked down like ancestors you'd failed. The IPO bell, the first factory ribbon, the late founder, Maxwell North, smiling with his sleeves rolled and his tie loose, the way he used to walk the floor on paydays to shake every hand. Beside him, a younger version of me, hair darker, eyes brighter, caught mid-laugh by the flash. I studied him as I carried out a banker's box full of pens, a ceramic mug with cracks like a river delta, and the small leather-bound notebook I had never shown anyone. In the elevator, Mike from compliance squeezed in at the last second, out of breath. He looked at the box, looked at me, lowered his voice. "I'm sorry, man. This wasn't us." "No," I said, watching the floor numbers blink downward. "It wasn't." He hesitated. "You still have your transition binder?" "In the top drawer." I lifted the edge of the box, revealing a tabbed set of documents with my handwriting on every margin. "They'll love it. I'm sure." He cleared his throat. "Hey, off the record. Q4 forecast feels ambitious." Elena's new targets, the narrative she. The doors opened. A security guard stepped in with us, hand near his belt like a habitual punctuation mark. Mike swallowed the rest and got off at the mezzanine, leaving me with silence and my own pulse. The exit interview was more ceremony than conversation. Human resources reading from a script, signing stacks of paper that turned my history into a series of initials. The NDA was there, of course, a paragraph of velvet teeth, but alongside it, in smaller print, sat the carve-outs for lawful reporting. Whistleblower protections I had insisted on years ago when I was trusted enough to write the policies no one thought they'd need. We shook hands. They slid a final envelope across the table, and that was that. I walked into rain. It was thin, needly, like the sky had switched from storm to static. I stood under the awning longer than made sense, watching taxis smear past in strokes of yellow oil paint. I should have gone home. I should have called my wife and told her I was on my way, that we'd take a drive, that we'd drink coffee with too much milk and talk about what came next. Instead, I ducked into the cafe across the street and opened the transition binder like it was a book of spells. Numbers were narratives, a language I had learned to translate. The Q4 pipeline projections felt wrong, not just optimistic, but contrived. Deals listed as committed had a new note in a hand I didn't recognize. Dates slid, tiny movements that looked harmless until you laid them side by side and saw the drift was all in the same direction. And there, tucked in the tab for international partners, a side letter. A promise of returns that transformed a sale into a loan if the client didn't hit certain metrics. That meant revenue, recognized now, might have to be reversed later. The ink was fresh. The signature was Elena's. My hands went cold. I turned the page, reading the side letter again, tasting the metal of it. Someone had buried it like a seed, expecting it to bloom in the dark after the quarter closed. If it did, Q4 would be sparkling, the stock would rise, options would vest. And then the plant would reveal itself as something else entirely. I heard Maxwell's voice in my head, not a memory so much as a conviction I had absorbed. We make things, not excuses. If you have to pick one, pick the truth, or you'll spend the rest of your life inventing better lies. I closed the binder and slid it into the box. The rain had leaned into itself. The world outside was a theater curtain of water. My phone buzzed. A calendar alert I hadn't canceled. Founders Gala, 7 p.m. Langley Ballroom. Black tie. The new president would give a keynote about tomorrow's Northland and announce the epic acquisition everyone had been whispering about. The board would attend. Investors, press, old friends in borrowed tuxedos. They would applaud her fresh perspectives. I called Maya. She picked up on the second ring. I heard, she said. Are you okay? Define okay. You always hated that question. What's going on? I need a second pair of eyes. I told her about the side letter, the drifted dates, the arithmetic that smelled like perfume. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a beat of silence, then the sound of her exhale. Where are you? Across the street. I'm coming. 20 minutes later, Maya slid into the seat opposite me, rain glittering on her lashes. She had been in internal audit as long as I'd been in operations. We'd spent nights in windowless rooms together, coaxing truth from spreadsheets until it confessed from the corner you hadn't thought to check. She pushed her glasses up and pulled the binder closer. If this letter exists, she said, it should have gone through my team. It didn't. I guessed. She read with her lips barely moving, a habit she developed in law school and never lost. This language, it's not ambiguous. She tapped the clause that turned a sale into a loan, then traced the signature with a fingernail. You're sure? As sure as the rain's wet. This... She looked up. This is a misrepresentation if it's not disclosed. And if her comp plan is tied to that quarter, it is. I took a folded document from the notebook, the compensation committee's latest framework, that someone had left on the copier last week like a church program. Accelerated vest on performance. The fireworks go off right after year-end. Maya's jaw set. We can't unsee this. I don't want to. I want them to see it too. You're not an employee anymore, she said gently, like someone telling a friend their sugar is high. You could be painted as disgruntled. I am disgruntled, I said, and felt a laugh snag in my throat. But that's not why I care. She was silent long enough that the coffee between us cooled. Outside, the river threw back a pewter shimmer. Come to the gala, she said finally. As a shareholder, I'll get you in. Ask a question. Put it on the record. She'll shut it down. Not if we do it right. She wrote a list on a napkin. Disclosure requirements, revenue recognition standards, the exact anesthetic words that force people like Elena to stop, smiling. We file a protected report tonight, time-stamped. We bring a copy to the chair of the audit committee in person. And then, she met my eyes. We ask about fresh perspectives. I looked at the napkin like it was a map to a country I had once drawn and forgotten. She'll panic, I said, and felt it land in my chest like a promise. When she sees me. At least she'll see you, Maya said. Really see you. I went home, shaved the day from my face, and slid into a tux I hadn't worn in 4 years. My wife pinned my father's cufflinks at my wrists and touched my cheek with the same tenderness she used to pat children's foreheads before she told them the shot wouldn't hurt. Be careful, she said. It sounded like I love you, in the language of people who've done life together long enough to skip the subtitles. The Langley ballroom smelled like peonies, money, and ambition. Crystals fell from chandeliers in tiers that made everyone tilt their chin. Beyond the velvet ropes, cameras winked. Familiar faces turned and did their microsecond recalculations as they recognized me with the box no longer in my hands. Some looked guilty. Some looked relieved, as if I'd been absorbed by a fog that proved their choices were weather, not will. Maya materialized at my elbow in navy silk that did for her what a good frame does for art, offered scale without stealing attention. Audit chair is here, she murmured. Back corner, talking to a journalist who thinks she's invisible. I've filed the report. Receipt acknowledged. Timestamp locked. How many paper copies? 3, she said. 2 for us, 1 for the gods. We crossed the room like conspirators in a story everyone thought they understood. I could feel my heart drawing a line on the inside of my ribcage. The dais gleamed. Behind it, a 10-foot screen displayed a looping montage. Assembly lines, smiling customers, a headline about sustainability, a shot of Elena shaking hands with a mayor whose name I could never remember. When she stepped onto the stage, the applause had an almost military efficiency to it, crisply on time and obediently prolonged. Good evening, she said, and the microphone loved her. Tonight we celebrate not just a company, but a story of innovation, of resilience, of fresh perspectives. Her eyes scanned the audience with quartz accuracy. When they caught on me, they stopped. It was microscopic, the stumble, the waver of pupil like a dropped stitch. But I have made a life of detecting hairlines before they become fractures. I felt it like a draft under a locked door. We slid into our seats near the aisle. The audit chair, Paula, was 6 rows ahead, profile sharp, eyes half-hooded, her attention like a blade resting on a cutting board. I tucked a sealed envelope under the chair across from her where a gloved server could, accidentally, find it. The screen behind Elena shifted to a graph climbing as confidently as spring. And now, she said, I'm thrilled to share our horizon. Epoch. The room leaned forward. I could smell perfume, the expensive kind that lives lower than flowers. My fingers found the edge of the envelope in my inner pocket. I thought of Maxwell, sleeves rolled, voice raspy with cigarettes he quit the year I was hired. We make things, not excuses. The Q&A portion arrived dressed as generosity. We value your questions, Elena said, which is what you say when you have decided most people will not ask any. A moderator with cheekbones like angles approached the aisle. Hands rose in rehearsed choreography. I kept mine down until Maya breathed. Now, I stood. A question, I said, my voice steady in a way my legs were not. About revenue recognition related to side agreements. The moderator turned, surprised. His smile creased. And you are? Shareholder, I said, and gave my name. A rustle moved through the rows. A small weather event. Elena didn't blink, but her hands changed position on the lectern, fingers spreading like someone bracing for turbulence. What specifically? She asked. To buy time. The treatment of contingent terms, I said. Maya had armed me with phrases that belonged to a different kind of violence, particularly clauses that transform sales into financing arrangements when performance thresholds are unmet. Could you speak to whether any such agreements exist that would materially impact Q4 if appropriately classified? It was the cleanest blade I could wield in public. No accusation, just room for the truth to arrive in. She opened her mouth. Behind me, a server gasped, then murmured, "Ma'am," to Paula, who was bending to retrieve the envelope with her name embossed along the seal. There was a small choreography of hands and paper. Elena saw the motion, and in that tiny second, when her gaze flicked, when the color in her cheeks lifted a shade nearer to panic, when the room's temperature shifted by a degree that a frog would feel and a thermostat would miss, I understood that I had not misread a single number. "I'm happy to follow up offline," she said, and the moderator tried to pivot, but Paula's voice, cool, trained, the voice of a person whose job was to name things exactly, cut through the pearl noise. "Let's address it now," she said, and that was when Elena panicked.